Hi everyone, good morning. Thanks for joining in. We'll just wait for a minute for more folks to join in and then we'll move on for the session. Okay, we are seeing the numbers go up. Hi everyone, I'm Shivam Sareen. I manage corporate innovation at NASSCOM. Hope you all are fine and ready for the insights and the learnings from this session. Today we have Ramasubramanian Radhakkrishnan. He's Executive Director at Verizon India, and he'll be talking about the emerging trends that are driving customer experience through interesting success stories and use cases. And before I hand it over to him, I'll request the attendees to keep posting your questions or queries in the Q&A tab. Rama will be addressing those in the second half of the session. And I would like to request Rama to take it over and share his insights and stories with us. Over to you, Rama.
Right. Thank you, Shivam. Firstly, I'm hoping everybody's staying safe and staying healthy. Thanks for the introduction, Shivam. As Shivam said, I'm Rama Radhakkrishnan. I lead all of technology for the Verizon Consumer Group, based out of Chennai in India. Been with this industry for the last 15 plus years, and I've primarily worked in the technology space all along, driving innovation and digital transformation for Verizon. Just to start with an introduction about Verizon. Verizon is a US telecommunication company. It's the largest wireless service provider in the US, of course, and the first to introduce fiber internet, also 5G standards to the world, in the commercially introduced 5G to the world. In India, it's primarily the Verizon's tech center. We focus on driving global technology solutions for Verizon from 3 locations based out of Chennai, Hyderabad, and Bangalore. Verizon in India was established 20 years ago. This is our 20th anniversary in India. So one of the first GCCs, Global Capability Centers, built in India. And over the last 20 years, we've evolved from what started out as a cost arbitrage into an operating center, a delivery center, now a true innovation and transformation center. Over the last 2 decades, we've built extremely strong subject matter expertise in the telecommunications domain, along with running our businesses in terms of new experiences, product lines for Verizon's brand. So that's about Verizon. And today's session, I just wanted to talk about the flow of today's session. So for the first few minutes, I touch upon the emerging technologies that enhance customer experience in the industry by and large. Though I work for Verizon, which is a telecommunication company, one thing that I've realized over the last many years working here is that there's a lot of commonality in terms of use cases and experiences, especially when it comes to the end customer experience. Which may be true for multiple industries, especially when you are building products for B2Cs. It is extremely important that we understand that there's a lot of commonality in terms of use cases. And that's primarily what I'm going to touch in the first segment. Followed by that, specifically double click on 2 or 3 use cases that may be of interest to all of you, especially with what happened with 2020 and 2021 with the COVID pandemic, how that accelerated the entire digital transformation for us as a business. From there, I would also talk about the startup connects. How do enterprises connect with startups? High level flow of what we do and how we do it, and why we do it. And towards the end, in my part of the session with certain expectations as an enterprise leader when we work with startups. What is our expectations in terms of product lines from startups? So those are going to be the key topics that I'm going to cover over the next 25 to 30 minutes. And towards the end, we will set aside a good 25 to 30 minutes for Q&A, hoping to get your questions and provide my responses to the best ability of mine. All right. So with that, starting with the emerging technology to enhance customer experience. So to begin with, the first thing I'll talk about is a lot of experiences today, owing to COVID, as truly moved into what we call as total experiences. Total experiences is a summation of what we call as multi-experience. It includes aspects of ensuring that we focus on the customer experience, the employee experience, the user experience, and all of this is driven through experiential resources. And to begin with, if I look at the journey of a customer along with the pandemic, what really happened was we were stuck. A lot of the businesses, including Verizon, we were heavy in terms of brick and mortar based businesses. The usual business model for businesses was to take the customers to the store. And when we take the customers to the store, that's where most of our revenue, sales, and growth would happen. But when the pandemic hit us, where we were struggling in terms of most of the businesses were struggling in terms of getting customers out of their homes to the stores, because of course we couldn't do that. The biggest challenge that laid before all of us was how do we transform the business to a point where and do that fairly quickly, so that we were able to move the business forward in terms of revenue and growth. No, that in itself was the why, and the only way for that we could do that is to bring in elements of augmented reality, virtual reality, and also look at aspects of how we would combine the physical elements that is true in a brick and mortar based model and a store based model to the digital elements, which is completely virtual. And that's where during this time what was born was what we call as digital. Very specifically in the United States, what was also true was after the first 3 to 4 months of heavy impact, somewhere between the months of March to May, we tended to bounce back in terms of opening stores in a limited fashion. But what was still true was the experiences that the customers wanted in terms of purchase experience for buying a mobile product was where they still wanted to have a look and feel of the product that they're buying. And with that being the scenario, what was extremely important was how would we transform that experience when they walk into a store. So to have the stores open, but when the stores are open, we had to also be mindful of the element of human touch, because one of the important factors going around with the pandemic was the spread of the virus, and how do you ensure that you minimize the human touch across the board, right? So which is very, very essential in a physical environment. So we started focusing on various immersive next generation use cases, including creating a virtual 3D shelf. Right, and then also creating try-on experiences for our customers. And when I say try-on experiences, it was a watch try-on. It could be a phone try-on along with a face try-on, and also using AR to have side-by-side compares on the app for different phones. So the entire experience was not only digital, where you have content that gets rendered on a mobile form factor or a desktop form factor, but more importantly, it was immersively oriented, where the physical elements of the device and what the device constituted of in terms of its features, a 360 degree view of the device per se, also provided an opportunity for the customers to get a feel of the device itself, which was an important factor in the pre-COVID era when there was a purchase pattern. So the purchase patterns were defined by the footfalls in the store. So without the footfalls in the store, how do we take that kind of an immersive experience to the homes of the customers? That in itself was the problem statement, and we had to build all of these experiences. And then in terms of the technologies, as I spoke about, XR or AR, VR, along with AV, computer vision, and crunching of those images real time, images and videos real time, and 3D modeling, were all became table stakes. What used to be a good to have or a great to have towards giving a wow experience for our customers from last year, April, May onwards became status quo, became table stakes. To an extent, even in India, a lot of retail stores, even textile stores here in India, where they try to have that experience. They do video-based shopping, WhatsApp-based shopping experiences, where you get a video call, etc. So all these have become the norm right now for any large enterprise towards getting more customers, getting more footfall. Could be virtual. The most important thing that you have to focus on problem statement, right? The average time that a customer spends in the store would be usually very high, would be to the tone of around 45 minutes to an hour at the store. But then we had to create experiences where if a customer is just ordering online and they want to come and pick up the device in the store, how do we not have them come into the, or minimize the requirement for them to come into the store, stand in a line, engage with an agent, etc. How do you minimize all those touch points? So that's where the whole connection between physical and digital elements come into play, where we provided what we call as curbside pickups. So very similar to what happens in a McDonald's or a Chick-fil-A, where they come and pick up food on the go, correct? So imagine that experience for mobile devices, for electronic gadgets. And along with that, a couple of years ago, Amazon introduced locker concepts across different parts of the US. And taking that concept, also in terms of implementing lockers for our customers, so that they could place an order and come and collect it anytime, 24/7, where we have dedicated lockers for them at different parts of the city, is something that we built on. So what was extremely important was, in addition to thinking about these use cases and trying to implement them quickly, some of these also meant that we were integrating with product suites or other startups. Take, for example, the locker scenario. The product is not something that we built ground up. It was already a product that was built by a startup, and we had to just integrate within our ecosystem. So as an enterprise, that's the other important aspect that we look towards, which is how are we able to integrate with any of the product suites seamlessly. And that actually became a reality with the touchless experience. So as I spoke about, we focused on minimizing the need for the customers to come into the store, reduce the footfalls, make it more virtual by introducing 360-degree virtual store experiences, and also providing phone compares and the 360 view of the phone devices, etc. But in the event of the customers coming into the store, how do we minimize the human touch points, right? And for that, what we ended up doing was we ended up focusing on moving most of these experiences into the app as they come in. So if the customer walks into the store, authentication, earlier the authentication would require them to show up one of the ID proofs, etc. Now we completely got away with that. As they come in, started pushing verification or authentication, two-way authentication to their devices, ensure that we were able to have a wall garden, so that as they come in, we were able to validate them. And once we validated them, totally cashless payments, even payments with cash in our kiosks, we ended up making it truly touchless, where they were able to deposit. Earlier, there was a teller who would collect the money from them. So truly, it required us to change the way we looked at our business, change the way we looked at how the brick and mortar business worked, and move most of these experiences to digital-oriented businesses. And that's primarily what was the most impactful use case over the last 18 months, I would say. And it is true for every business, even if you look at businesses like Target, Walmart, which are more into the retail business per se, and of course they have a variety of products that they sell. Today they compete heavily with online e-commerce retailers like Amazon, and the way they've done that is by truly transforming their digital business. If you look at Target's quarterly results for last quarter, it's been amazing, and the way they've transformed their entire digital suite the entire experience that customers go through with them in terms of digital ability to create, to understand or get that experience of utilizing a product at home, the try-ons, all of that is now become table stakes, and those are use cases leveraging AR and VR, and that's something that is extremely important in the customer experience. Outside of that, the other important aspect is every day as an enterprise, especially if you're an enterprise who's directly facing end customers in either the retail segment or you are providing a service to the customer, there is hyper competitiveness in terms of services that you provide. What really differentiates is the experience, and how seamlessly integrated this experience is into the day-to-day journey of our customers is extremely important. I'll give one example, something that maybe may sound a little cheesy, but imagine you bought a new mobile phone, and as you bought a new mobile phone, you by mistake you ended up dropping the phone. When we buy the mobile phone online, there's a lot of AdWords, or there's a lot of push that comes in from the seller in terms of, okay, do you want to buy an insurance, do you want to buy mobile protection, etc. But invariably, most of the customers end up choosing no to that because we per se don't really think that there's a need for it. But then, how contextually can you place that information is also very important. So one such example is if you're the customer, you end up dropping the phone. And then as you pick the phone, you realize it's a brand new phone that you've dropped and it may develop a crack. But then the moment you pick the phone, let's say utilizing the gyroscope, accelerometer, or the heat sensor within the phone, you automatically pop up a mobile protection option to the customer saying, oh, we see that you've dropped the phone, but don't worry, here's an option for you to protect your mobile phone instantaneously. So such perspective-based learning. So the moment the customer gets that pop-up where she or he gets to understand, oh, this is an option that I could have taken, it creates an aha moment for the customer in terms of how the experience that the particular service provider is providing is tailor-made for them, and more importantly, as a service provider, we've got their backs. And that is what builds loyalty with the brand, and eventually stickiness in terms of the brand, and creates more revenue opportunities, reduces cost out of the system because the customers are going to digitally work with you from that point. So that's just another example of how we would have to start looking at every journey point of the customer and start reimagining how this would each and every touch point of the customer would change digitally. So at a high level, those are some of the use cases very specifically from the customer experience standpoint that I would want to start the conversation with. Now, from there, if you think about primarily the whole aspect of startups, especially startups in India, how do enterprises like us engage with startup collaboration? So the whole element of startup collaboration is exceedingly important to a lot of large enterprises, and the reason is the reason is, if you think about it, there is hyper competitiveness across the industry. The rate of change and velocity of change is super fast. That if enterprises think that they can develop technology by themselves, it's not going to. Both of them don't go well hand in hand. So the need for us to tap into extremely strong products or creative and innovative solutions from startups. And look, from my standpoint, every startup or when we engage with any startup, we treat it as good as any other product company, right? And the product is what is, and we also, our services are also products at the end of the day. So if we are dealing with a product company, what's exceedingly important for us is to ensure that we are very clear about the why, and why means why of the product. What does the product have to offer? And that's primarily what we start looking at in terms of startups. So when we, I can talk about our journey. So when we started our journey with startup collaboration 3 years ago, we hardly had any understanding of the startup ecosystem. So that's when we partnered with Shivam and NIPP to help with the startup curation, do search and discovery and curation based upon the problem statements that we had in hand, statements in the first place, which itself is a huge task, which are very, very oriented towards the umbrella priorities of the enterprise. But then to break it down to an extent where we'll be able to work in collaboration with entrepreneurs and startups is where the startup generalists such as NIPP or other companies come into play. They help us to break down into problem statements, which we can then use for search and discovery and careful curation. So over the last 2 to 3 years, that's primarily what we've done. We've worked with numerous startups in the spaces. Or as an example, I can give you is we've done a lot of work in the 3D modeling space, AR, VR space with startups where we focused on trying to ensure that we build this whole virtual store and again create adjacencies from the products that they have. So just don't stop with some of these startups will come and talk to us about their AR, VR, XR solutions in terms of authoring, deployment, and tracking, which is towards the retail side of the business. But then take that and try to put that into a completely different part of your enterprise. That's the adjacency that I keep referring to. In the L&D, in the learning and development part of our enterprise, or in a completely different part, including where technicians go to the customer's premise. So the applicability of the product or the solutions that that startups have is not maybe may start at a particular point, but it may have a lot of adjacent implementation across different walks of the business. So that connect is extremely important, and that's what we've discovered as we went along this journey of collaborating heavily with startups. So AR, VR, XR solutions is another key example. The other one is very specifically in terms of app adoption, creating next generation user guidance support. So those have been problem statements and use cases that we've spent a lot of time in, and also in the space of info security and network. We've had a bunch of use cases that we've thrown out challenges on, and we've gotten a lot of startups, primarily from Bangalore, who work with us, and we've taken the conversation to the next level with NDAs, prototypes, and then eventually integration and large-scale deals. So that's at a high level what we do. Our entire framework, if you think about it, starts with an inception, which is the idea in itself, to define the why and the how, and then building affinity, which is in terms of integrating with large-scale enterprises, and then eventually sustainability, which focuses on the long-term implementation. And in other areas, if I have to talk about other areas of use case and solutions, which every enterprise is to look at, now that most of this is all digital oriented, is all AI driven. What's extremely important is how do we tap into that the whole digital humanization and automative AI. So those are all areas that we look into. And with the advent of 5G in terms of network, it provides excellent capabilities in terms of network and the bandwidth that is required for us to implement a lot more B2C or B2B2C use cases. And enterprises would start deploying their own 5G networks. You could see that happening across the globe already. So when you have dedicated paths or dedicated prongs of network coming from specific providers, the use cases are galore. The amount of bandwidth, for example, it's going to be extremely easy for you to even play a bunch of 8K movies in parallel with a bandwidth of around 1 gigabits per second. And that's the speed that 5G tends to offer. So today, the reality is the network with 5G, the bandwidth that will be available for any customer is going to be so humongous that the use cases that are potentially possible to consume that bandwidth is still work in progress. not many companies have cracked as to what it would mean to an end customer in terms of use cases with the advent of 5G. And that is a huge space and area of opportunity for everybody. And of course, the underlying tech stack to enable network-based use cases, including open source SDKs, the common router software protocols for complete data management of the router. All of those are still a lot of opportunity areas in terms of use cases from a 5G standpoint, data management at the end user standpoint. So that's at a high level, the use cases and what we do with startups. I will also talk about a couple of key points that I want to leave with you before I start taking the questions in terms of what would I look forward in terms of engagement with startups. Number one is, as I said earlier, would look at any entrepreneurial engagement or startup as a product company, providing a new capability that doesn't exist in our enterprise. That's the way we look at it, and it's extremely important from that standpoint. So what that empowerment would also mean is the product that you build would also have to have a very robust and strong underlying architecture, which would enable two or three things to scale to enterprises scale. Imagine telecom companies such as Airtel or Jio in India, or likes of Verizon and its competitors in the US. The scale of operations is so humongous that any implementation in terms of taking to all of its customers would require scale. Which means when you start as a startup, the underlying product that you build, it may not have that scale when you initially do the product build up. But what is extremely important, what we definitely look forward is the underlying architecture. Is that truly scalable? So the investment of through design time in terms of that architecture is extremely important. Scalable and robust architecture. The other one is interoperability and seamless integration with ecosystems of large enterprises. And this is also very important because look, you build it as a product. When you build it as a product, you're going to work with different industries, enterprises of different industries, and when that happens, there are industries which focus on B2C. Even within my company, we have a B2C, we have a B2B, and we have a B2B2C segment within our own company. And the underlying what we call as OSS and BSS stacks, tech stacks of all of these different business units are very, very different. And usually large enterprises and the systems are usually complex. So when the product suite that you're building, how does it integrate, or what are the hooks or the plugins that are available for it to seamlessly integrate, which means you have to go back and focus on industry standards to some extent, which is not easy when you start building a product from ground up. But then eventually the product's maturity will have to evolve towards being able to adhere to certain standards, which helps with seamless integration with large scale enterprises. So those are two key points in terms of the product per se. And always keep looking at adjacencies, as I said earlier, right? And that's extremely important. So what you start off with in terms of a use case with any given enterprise for your product, you may end up having multiple opportunities in terms of adjacencies with very, very different use cases with the same product line with limited customization to the implementation. So that, I think, is going to be extremely important for large scale success of any startup or any product. So those are the two or three things that I have as tidbits for startups. So with that, I'll stop for now. I've at a high level spoken about some use cases and what we expect in terms of collaboration with entrepreneurs and startups. I see a bunch of questions come up. I'm going to start taking those questions. Shivam, you want to?
Sure, yeah, sure, Raman. Thanks for sharing all the examples and all the important points in the space. So we have one first question from Sitaraman. He's asked, what CRM tool you use for Customer 360?
Sure. we use a combination of homegrown plus a commercial off the shelf. And again, because Verizon is a large enterprise, we have different business units. Different business units use different products. Between Pega, Salesforce, and our own homegrown solutions is what we use for Customer 360. Yeah, so what I was saying was, when it comes to Customer 360, the Customer 360 itself has different components. Number one is the underlying data pipeline build. For a large enterprise, it's just not about the customer and looking at only the journey of the customer in terms of their transactions or history with us. The continuous experience that they have with us, and all the pipelines in terms of their bills getting generated, their payments being done, the entire booking of those payments. So it's truly the pipeline that is the most important. Number one. Number two, this is for existing customers, right? What happens for prospects? How do you build a database for prospects? So in a large enterprise like us, yes, there are going to be commercials off the shelf, right, which would enable certain facets of the Customer 360 in terms of crunching that information to compute next best action to the customers. But then the complete 360 in terms of putting data together, and then punching the data to generate information into insights into action, is going to be a combination of internal engineering build, which is done within by the engineering groups of the company, right, plus a combination with commercials of this. So that's primarily how I would put what we do for a CRM from.
Sure. We have another question from Vivek, who's MD of Kaizen Secure. So he's mentioned that they're the startup in deep tech space with patented products in voice, biometrics, and analytics and speech, and helping the customer life cycle, automating the customer life cycle. And they've given an example. I'll not be able to take up that whole example as such. But the question is that they see a lot of mainstream telcos doing a wait and watch policy on adopting the solutions that they are offering. So he wants to ask that, telcos like Verizon, are they ready to take this path, or are there any other issues with this, or what's the status on such solutions that are being offered?
No, and honestly, voice biometrics is something that that whole voice footprint is something that we already have implemented almost 2 years ago. So it's not that there is any kind of a delay. Again, I'm not very sure about how the current maturity of telcos in India per se, but very specifically to the market in the US and utilizing any advent in terms of concepts like KYC or voice biometrics is already in place, and I can attest to that. And look, any telco or every company out there has just two objectives in my view at a high level. One is to focus on increasing the top line and reducing the bottom line in terms of reducing the cost of business, right? So if you look at it that simply, absolutely yes, because a voice biometric. So for example, if you all remember. In those, even now, a lot of companies in India are still heavy on DTMF on IVR. Right. DTMF is your prompts, right? Yeah. But then, if you call into a Verizon call center, we moved out of DTMF almost 2 to 3 years ago. So it's all voice based. The moment you are able to understand the voice of different customers. The voice biometric, or my voice is my identity, is something that's easily implementable, and that has already been taken into account. So and if that reduces cost, it takes cost out of business, because every second that is customer is on call, is waiting for a call, is cost to business. Right. And that's something I realize. So anything in terms of automation, and that's the other emerging technology, other emerging trends in the industry. It's called as hyper automation. Mm-hmm. So anything that you are able to touch and automate should be automated. And of course, what will happen is there is definitely a knowledge debt. There is process debt in every industry or in every enterprise, and that overall enterprise debt brings down the agility of the enterprise. Mm-hmm. Okay. And the solution towards that is what is called hyper automation, where you touch every process, every domain within the enterprise, and you try to automate what can be automated. And that focus is also one of the emerging trends that industries are looking at, companies are looking at for sure.
Right, Ram, I think just to add to that, so for example, in case of Verizon, you said that there are solutions already available that you're using. Maybe I think what Vivek also wanted to understand was since they are approaching telcos in this space, so is it an issue where like maybe the telcos already have the solutions, so they're not looking at newer solutions from start?
Well, possibly, and again, also what we'll have to understand is if you look at companies or products that are already being used, right? So take for example the IVR solution, right? There are large players when it comes to telephony or telephony-based services today. Correct. So for them, they used to be working on. They have today have the complete telephony interface in terms of the ports management, etc. What used to be called as the IVR, right? Now, those enterprises, those product companies themselves have started doing acquisition of other companies that were into voice biometrics. So they end up offering this as a package. In addition to what they used to do, now they come back and give voice biometrics as a service. I'm just giving that as an example, right? And now if you think about it, now that's where the whole division is. Oh, here's a product, a commercial of the shelf that we've been working with for many years. They have this offering. It's a brand new startup who's also saying that I have the same feature. So where do I go?
That window, right? You'll go for someone who's already in your ecosystem in a way.
Because it comes across as an additional add-on to an existing implementation. So the understanding of the ecosystem may be better. So those are the nuances out there. Again, every situation is unique, every company is unique. So I don't want to overly generalize it also, but at the same time, that's also extremely important. So the reason why some of these adjacent implementations to an existing implementation, an enhancement to it, it's not something that an enterprise may want to go back and directly deal with the startup. Instead, if an existing commercial of the shelf is providing that as an added feature. That's why if you look at a lot of product companies, commercials of the shelf, they end up acquiring a lot more startups than enterprises working with the startup. The reason is they add it to their product suite. They keep adding these features into their product suite, which then becomes easy in terms of implementation for an enterprise. At the same time, so from the same time, again, they are able to sell it and pitch it better with enterprises because of the current implementation relationships. So that's it, my world of the view.
No, I agree with you in this sense. Like that is one more factor that founders would have to consider. And obviously, as you said, it will be different for each company, each sector. So they'll have to figure out, what can be another way of approaching telcos. So there's a follow-up from Sita Raman, who had asked us regarding the 360 CRM tool that you're using. So he's asked that he wanted to understand how you manage with changing algorithms of the tools as well as the business dynamics.
Yeah, absolutely. So where is that question? In your which one is that?
So they've mentioned in the chat. The first question was what CRM tool you use for customer 360, and as a follow-up, they've asked what are some of I was trying to understand how you manage with changing algorithms of the tools as well as business.
Yeah. Got it. Okay, sure. So gee, again, when it comes to customer 360, again, the changing algorithm. So what we do is, it again goes back to the underlying architecture that you have as an enterprise, right? Today, if you look at the architecture of implementation of platforms, we used to run models. If you think about running models 2 to 3 years ago, those are all models that were run statically, offline model runs. 24 hours out, data gets crunched and we run them through algorithms and have a model output or an outcome, and that gets used for decision making. When I say decision making, you feed it to the next best action engine, and then it says, oh, here's the data 24 hours out, and here's the output, there's the action for this particular customer. Now, what we are able to do is, now because of the improvements in terms of compute, our ability to crunch data real time, and sophisticated and robust architecture that we put together, we are able to run these algorithms real time. real-time modeling is extremely true, and it is extremely needed for calling in just to complain about how bad the network quality has been. Now, I also understand that it's your service anniversary with us, or there's some other offer that or promotion that is out there for us to give to you. Now, what am I going to decide? Am I going to pitch you the offer, or am I going to talk to you about your network outage? Right? If the insights are in real time, where I don't even have an awareness that you are calling me because you've been on an outage for the last 6 to 18 hours, then I'm going to come back and say, oh, next best action for this customer is please pitch them this offer.
Right.
And imagine your experience when I'm going to come and pitch, oh, here's your new offer. Thank you for being a loyal customer. When you're calling me being upset that your service has been down for the last so many hours, right?
Yeah.
So therefore, what's extremely important is the underlying the platform that we build, the architecture that we build, with the advent of real-time compute and ability to process data in both speeds, both what we call as Lambda architecture of data processing. It's extremely important for us to be able to manage data real time and then run models real time, take insights. You have, of course, have a static store. So usually it doesn't change for 90% of the time. But then if there are real time events that have triggered a change, then how do you recompute and use the new outcomes towards driving actions to the customers is extremely important. So that's what we do. It's to go back and focus on our pipeline, data pipeline, and a real-time modeling platform to be able to run these real-time and then subsequently feed it back to the action engine.
Right. Sure. So we have another question from Arvind. That's, you spoke about brick and mortar coming to IT services and products. Do you think Indian CIOs are ready to welcome the technologies for sales decisions in true sense? They still prefer face-to-face, according to Arvind.
Oh, and it's not only about Indian CIOs. I can tell you this is still possibly the way of the world in most parts. In fact, if I again, it also depends upon type of business we are into, right? Because see, the marketplace concept with advent of large companies like e-commerce companies like Amazon or Flipkart has truly opened out opportunities for a lot of small businesses which didn't exist earlier. But in the classical sense, in a country like India, there is still a vast majority of us who would want to go to a store and still get the experience firsthand and be convinced when you have an agent come and tell you, oh, this is actually better than this, rather than we going through the specifics ourselves and buying a product or choosing a product. So, and look, and that's the biggest challenge of being an IT leader, being a CIO. The decisions that you'll have to take, where you have to balance the needs of the physical world and the digital world, is true in sense. And as the leader of the technology unit of the consumer group of Verizon, that's something that I go through on a day-to-day basis. So how do you provide a combined experience? And that's the whole concept of digital that I was talking about. It is extremely important for us to push more and more digitally because it takes out cost from the business. You have as a technology entity, you have more control. You're able to make changes at that velocity that will help your business move forward. But at the same time, there are going to be customer behavior patterns or purchase patterns, which would require you to also have a good experience in the store. So right. Combining, taking those digital elements and putting them into the store is possibly a good alternative to begin with.
Right.
And then eventually, as companies become more mature and the digital journeys become more mature, automatically you will start seeing a customer behavior shift. Look, and this is very true. Take our payments industry in India. And I can tell you, relatively, the payments industry in India, when I talk about payments, I'm talking about digital payments, is far, far ahead than the rest of the world. Yes. I can tell you that much, right? Mm-hmm. Today, every small store picks up any of your UPI-based payments.
Yeah.
You don't even have to carry cash in hand, honestly.
Yeah.
That's a wonderful the interface and its scale to that extent, and that is adoption, and that will it did not happen 3 years ago. It has slowly but surely happened, correct?
Right.
So COVID, in my view, has been an enabler of sorts for a lot of businesses towards looking at digital.
So
Even some of those mid-size retail enterprises have started doing sales based on WhatsApp calling, and that's what I'm saying, right? Textile stores, stores that sell electronic and electrical appliances, they all try to shift to video-based ordering.
right. And just to add to this, it's all about the timing as well. The same solution will work at a different point of time. So, for example, when these e-commerce sites started with a lot of offers and everything, one of the main things they offered was that they are okay with cash on delivery, right? That was a big selling point at the starting. That because customers, even the younger ones like me, wouldn't really be very, I would say, feel secure about ordering online and paying in advance. And now I think we had a situation where young lot was all okay with sharing credit card details and everything. But after COVID, we've seen even our parents being okay with that, with prepaid orders. So I think the timing also matters a lot in terms of the customer adoption, as you said, like the customer behavior, I guess. So we have another question from Sita Raman, and I think it's a yes or no. Do you think IVR's volume are lower now compared to chatbots?
Again, to be honest with you, it depends upon the order of the day. Let me put it that way. Typically, the patterns have definitely dropped. The calling patterns have dropped because we have chatbots, and today a lot of implementation of chatbots is towards customer service related use cases, honestly. And by the way, I'm also going to tie this question back to Arvind's point. There are advancements like a chatbot interface, right? The use cases that have been implemented successfully are more so for service. When I say service, it's an existing customer, they have queries. It's more seamless from that standpoint. Versus not doable, very for partnering with even Facebook, Instagram, along with our own chatbot-based commerce. So that's, I'm sorry, I think there was a audio loss on my end, right?
Yeah, just 2-3 seconds, yeah.
What I was trying to say was the commerce-based transactions using chatbot is actually more complex than a service-based transaction, because in a service-based transaction, you're an existing customer, you know what your challenges are. There's a bunch of decision tree recommendations that come from a chatbot, and you choose and you get responses. But in a commerce flow, there are going to be decision paths which are very dynamic depending upon the need of the customer. So for you to tailor make the decision trees in a chatbot to have a commerce order transaction go through is usually more complex. But then, trust me, it's becoming a good channel of engagement. There are customers who prefer to even buy products through chatbots nowadays. There are it's not too many, but again, there are customers who are taking that flow as well. That much I can tell you. Now, connecting back to therefore the volumes on the IVR, absolutely yes. Customers, because of the advent of smartphones, they prefer to not be on a call with a IVR prompt. Instead, they prefer to definitely chat or the chatbot for service-related transactions. And even within the IVR, a lot of companies have gone away from the classical DTMF-based prompts. They moved into what we call speak freely, where you can just request for an agent, and then you are talking. Very similar to the chatbot experience, where you're typing instead you're just talking to an autonomous agent, and the agent is giving you responses. And eventually, if the agent is not able to respond, it connects you with a human agent. Very similar to the chat flows also. Today, the chat flows start with a chatbot, then eventually goes to a human chat agent, and then if it doesn't work, they connect you to a voice agent. So those are the 3 levels of support that every company, it's become standard these days across all companies and enterprises.
Right. So, Rama, we have some 8 minutes.
Sure.
We try to finish all the questions, and before that, I would say, like, from my personal experience, if I need to get something done, I'll always choose the chatbot and get stuff done, whatever information I need. But if I need to complain, I would need a human to complain. I think that's what I have realized in my interactions. So moving on to the questions, and Rama, I'll request you to keep the answers short as possible.
Sure.
Anubhav is asking that you had mentioned about relevance of AR VR, which is not easy to implement, not easy for a small boutique firm to implement. But what are other easy to use tech that you may suggest for customer experience and customer acquisition in general?
What other easy to use tech you may suggest? Okay, you
Compared
mentioned.
to AR VR.
Oh, compared to AR VR, again, I think what is more important, say, AR VR is towards providing a near physical experience virtually, correct? That's family. The augmentation of the reality is all that means. If not, the simplest way for a small boutique firm to focus on is towards ensuring that they're very crystal clear about the content that they render and the information that they provide. I will start from there because today a large opportunity is to focus on better user experience design in terms of in terms of the experience that they provide digitally. Um, Companies tend to push a lot of information down the customer's way. It may not work most of the time. How seamless and how easy are your workflow steps in terms of any transaction, be it a service or a commerce transaction, is exceedingly important. That I think would be the simple to begin with. And of course, one thing that we all have to realize is when we are even a small or a large scale enterprise, personas of customers are going to be very different. And it's extremely important that we are able to capture and understand that we're not able to firstly capture 100% of all personas. But then if we are able to capture vast majority of the personas in terms of our transaction flows and the experience that we provide, the outliers are going to be handled through an exception basis. That's why you have your support centers, etc., to handle exceptions. But the initial journey flows will have to capture vast majority of your personas, different groups of people. So that would be my.
Right. So we have another question from Amit. For a multi-device scenario where a lot of healthcare devices are sending data to analytics platform, how do we counter the lags coming from dependent devices in live environments, like a bandwidth balance to counter latency along with 5G network?
Oh, absolutely, and this is where what's extremely important. So what we and this is true for healthcare. This is also true for anything that has even if you take about even telecom, right? So we have concepts called Lifeline in the US. Lifeline is primarily where you have to provide telco services to age people, and they need to support it just a single click. So our ability to keep monitoring and pass on the data to, so that's where concepts like what we working on called MEC, multi-edge compute, where you are able to collect data at the node of the network, and which is finally closer to the points where the customers are, and then you're able to propagate all those packets quickly into the data grid for processing. So these are advancements within the network per se, which has the ability to therefore capture data, minimize latency, and that's true with 5G. So if you look at implementations that publicly available implementations with AWS, etc., you can see that there are mechanisms to deliver content from the edge, as well as to receive information or propagate data back, which would help eventually for us to be able to process that information more real time and help in real world need scenarios like healthcare.
Right. There's another question from Vivek who asked you about other like the bigger players also.
Yeah.
He mentioned that he has they have been working with other large players in terms of interacting with their direct customers. What they're asking is there a scope for startups such as them to present to Verizon or other place directly? So before you answer, Rama, I'll just mention this. So this program that we have, NIPP, NASSCOM Industry Partnership Program, that's basically for corporates and startups to connect right? So there are other programs within NASSCOM and other players. So you can always reach out to us regarding such requests. But what you have to keep in mind that you'll be able to pitch to a corporate only if they're interested, or only if your solution is something unique and which they haven't seen yet, right? So those factors will always be there. You can't expect corporate to always kind of be ready for listening to or checking out new solutions. if they don't require it at all. Rama, do you want to share your perspective?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and true that as well. See, today, as I was explaining earlier, that is the process for some for enterprises like the NIPP platform, what Shivam is connecting back to, has grown in terms of number of enterprises participating as well. See, one is this number of startups, but number of enterprises who are a part of NIPP when it started to where it is right now has definitely grown 3 or 4 folds. And what that means is there's a structure in terms of use cases or problem statements that enterprises bring in for curation, search, and discovery. See, again, absolutely, yes, we are open to partner, but it also needs to make enterprise sense, as in for a company. If the enterprise is not looking forward for certain use cases, the appetite for them to look at a particular startup or work with a particular startup is also going to be lower. And it's a clear indication that it doesn't fall into those the sweet spot of the need that they have as an enterprise. That's how typically these large-scale enterprises work with it. But what I would suggest is you should definitely connect with Shivam, and because today they between Shivam and his team run all of the NIPP needs, say all of our startup needs for companies like Verizon and many more companies. Many more companies have much better and much more mature startup incubation processes as well. So that's the best place to start. And I'm pretty sure if there is a need, there will be a match, and you'll reach the right companies to partner with.
Right. No, thanks, Rama, for mentioning that as well. As a last question from my side, I think founders a lot of times want to understand what exactly is the right or the wrong way. So, in a sentence, if you would like to tell a founder that what should be their intro mail, like if they somehow reach out to you directly, or even through a NIPP or any other programs, what should be their intro mail? What should be a part of it? How long, how short? So if you have a very brief, suggestion on this one.
Shivam, I lost the last 2 lines.
No, so
Can you
I
please
just
repeat
say
it,
that,
Shivam? Sorry.
so what would be your suggestion for a founder who's sending you or NIPP team an intro mail? As an enterprise and as a corporate leader, what do you want to know within that first mail, and how long or short it should be, or what the look or feel should be? Like just your perspective. I'm sure like everyone has a different one, but understand your perspective.
For me, when I look at a startup, my and an introduction email, number one is the why behind the startup, as in the product that they have, and the USP of the product. That is the most important thing that I look forward in the introduction. And then what we try to draw is our rationale draws it in terms of capabilities that we need in-house for our enterprise. Okay. So invariably, all of us are large enterprises with a very strong engineering team as well, right? Information technology engineering team. So those capabilities that are not existent or that are gaps are going to be far from few. But then that is what we look forward. The USP, the why behind the product, is the most important part of the intro email that I look forward. What value add does the product or the startup want to provide to the enterprise? Everything else will follow. Oh, who are your investors? Who are your board members? Who is there in the board? All of that is secondary, because if the why is not very clear, then the how and the what is not going to be something that would even move forward to. So that's what I look forward in an intro email. Sure.
Right, and just to add to that, it's very important. What I've learned in my experience, if founders can just customize a bit, even the language, like it should not look like you've sent the same mail to 10 corporates. I think even that small thing affects a lot, because it just clarifies to the corporate that your intent is to work with them, right? So there are these bigger and smaller things that you should take care of as a founder. So thank you so much, Rama. This was really, really good. I think the insights from the customer experience point of view, the technology trends that are coming up, and how Verizon is looking at the space. I think these were the takeaways from the session. For the audience, we will be posting the session, across our social media handles as well later. Even the clips would come out. And if any of you wants to reach out regarding connecting with Verizon or anyone else, any other corporates, you can reach out to me at shivam@nascom.in. I've just posted my email ID in the chat, and we can connect and take it forward. So thanks, Rama. It was a great session. We'll plan some more with you, in the coming days as well. Thank you so much for joining in.
Oh, thank you everyone for taking time to join today. I hope all of you should stay safe and please spend good time with your families as well. Thank you for the time today. Thanks everyone.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you.